Okay, hello, I'm Giulia Tomasello and I'm almost 28. I'm from Italy and my background is in product design. Then I've been studying social design and recently I finished a master in material futures. So here I am, and my specialization is in wearable technology and electronic textiles. And recently I've been developing something like a little bit more experimental with bacteria, so that you can kind of call it biotextiles. So I guess that I consider biotextiles an interaction between living organism and your body. So if in the wearable technology you have the textile that is interacting with the user, here you have a microorganism that maybe is growing and is like just like in a symbiotic relationship responding to your body's input. And I've been just going into from like a living sustainability process, and I just started to grow things in my room. So I started by growing kombucha, and I was growing kombucha to make it conductive. So I was really growing the kombucha in my bed and bedroom and under my bed actually, and then hacking the process of growing and try to make a conductive cellulose, so to have a conductive biotextiles. And from there I move on to bacteria. So kombucha went away from the bed and bacteria came, let's say. So during this process I was in the Master Material Futures. So I was kind of inspired like daily by lectures or just basic research that I was doing. And I found myself very into the project when I made a connection between the living organism and actually my interest in women's healthcare. So actually the fact that we are made of bacteria. So I can really work with the living organism for something that it will be for myself or for women's. And I used the bacteria as it was the textile before. So it became really like my material to play with. So Future Flora is an harvesting kit designed for women to treat and prevent vaginal infection. So we can say that vaginal infections such as Candida, it's a very common infection where the 75% of women, they contract it during their life. So, and when a woman can have this kind of infection, it tends to come back every time that the body is debilitated or weak or after antibiotics or pregnancy. So it's something very common. And till now, there is no prevention. So what we really struggle in with our women's healthcare is the prevention and the care, and also the self-awareness, because in our society, we tend to don't speak about this taboo project or these taboo issues. Therefore, we tend to don't know what to do in case of vaginal infection or in case of menstruation. Like, there is a very lack of knowledge and education on it. With the kit, the woman can make her own sanitary pad made of bacteria. So the woman actually will swab the healthy bacteria on top and then let it grow and wearing it when it's ready. And so at the beginning it was difficult to even propose this option to the woman, to say, look, you can actually prevent your candida by wearing bacteria. Why? So then you start from the beginning, you start to explain that actually our body is made 90% of bacteria in our skin microbiome, and the rest, the 10%, is skin cell, human cell. So which are those bacteria? They are like fungus and normal bacteria, that they are just invisible to our eyes, so we cannot really perceive them. But if we actually think that every time that we have some problems, we tend to rehabilitate our gut, then we think, yes, it's the flora, it's our microbiome that is in our body that actually is helping us to function, to think, to react to instinct, and is actually coming from when we born, so from the vagina of our mom. So it's still there in a way. So therefore you think about that, yeah, we are made of bacteria, therefore the vagina has a vaginal flora, and it's made of lactobacillus. Those lactobacillus, well, ideally the majority is the family of lactobacillus. They live there with also fungus like candida, and when our body is more weak, the candida tends to overgrow and to create this kind of infection. So this is why some cures or some treatment are probiotics. So lactobacillus, they tend to replace the flora that is missing. So Future Flora is kind of, it has the same concept. So instead of taking probiotics by pills that goes in the gut and from the gut replace and rebalance the flora that is missing, it's basically growing bacteria on a pad that you can wear, and you can start again the rebalancing of this flora. Yes, there is a lot to do. So as you can see, like if now in 2018, like a lab like this one is actually starting to be alive, it means that we are like really at the beginning of something, especially in this multidisciplinary connection between scientists, designers, artists, doctors, and this is what we need. I mean, I truly believe that a designer has to collaborate in order to produce something meaningful and something that we need. And my interest in science and biology, it's because I'm really passionate about our bodies and our healthcare and well-being, and then very specific to women's healthcare. So what is missing is, I believe, speaking about it and really being honest and just not be afraid, like open up in conversation even from women's taboo, but also to bacteria, to infection, to many different topics that we just don't tend to speak about, because I stay in my world as a designer, another stay as his world as a scientist, but actually it's the connection and the merging that is creating new exciting ideas. And hopefully, I very hope this, that new connection will start, new like even challenges or like new collaboration will come from many places, even from companies. Because for now I see this movement coming from like singular designer or singular like scientist, but it's not there yet for big companies to really appreciate and to really like merge this in something that it will be real. So for now there are like more design projects, and I hope slowly it will come something that it will be available for the market. Probably and basically need some introduction and some induction, because it was something that why you're showing something like this. Basically I went in the design blog, that is a design blog, very famous, and I have like 31 misogynist comments, for example. So it really proves that if there were women in the 70s fighting for the right and for really showing that we should be equal, or like speaking about vaginal infection should be normal, we didn't really move forward in 2018. I heard about Open Cell before that Hélène contacted me, and actually I've been following her somehow for her work. So I'm very conscious of her work with MIT and the Second Skin project, because it's what I'm really interested as well. And it happened that recently the project Future Flora won the Stars Prize from Ars Electronica. That is an honor in innovation, science and technology in art. So Future Flora won the grand prize as artistic exploration, and therefore we've been connecting and actually developing new thinking, and she invited me to really visit this lab and give a talk. So the talk of today will be to show and to explain what is Future Flora, where it's coming from, why I've been developing it from a women's point of view, and all the process I went through, and how come like after 2 years that I've been making the project, it's actually just now being perceived in a positive way, because till now I've been receiving a lot of critics, and I hope that now, especially in a place like this one where the biodesign is actually the daily routine, so really thinking about how the designer can merge with the science and how actually the scientists can follow the designer path. I really hope to find a place where I can get challenges in a way with questions, but also I can be understood, because it's very difficult sometimes to explain this kind of project. I guess that in the design world, the act of designing a chair, making a table or vase is becoming a bit reductive, especially now thinking about all the sustainability thinking that we are trying to achieve and to actually make and achieve. So we need to really start from another approach. And the new approach can be working with different materials, such as material that they can actually biodegrade because they are biological, or they can actually renew because they are growing and they are living, they are alive. So I guess, and there is this fear in a way to really collaborate or work with the unknown, so work with the scientists, work with the physicists, and we just need a different way to communicate. So the language, when there will be a kind of easier language and common language to really approach the designer, the scientist, the physicist, or even the mathematician, we can then create a new interdisciplinary connection and project and making alive new things. So my path was very dramatic in a way, because I started to work with living organisms without really understanding before the time I needed. Because for a designer, you basically go in the lab, you chop a piece of wood and you work on it and it's done. The same you do with metal, the same you do with textile, the same you can do with the screen printing. It's everything there. You just need to gather the material and work with it. Living organism, working with living organism is completely different. You basically need to prepare them, prepare the recipe, try to make the good recipe and then let it grow. The let it grow process is not a day, probably it's a week or even more. And then you need to hope that when it's growing, you kind of nurture this material and you have a relationship that is growing well. Because if it doesn't grow well, it kind of die, or it kind of, it's wrong in a way. So you need to grow it again. Or when you grow it and it's ready, how you really treat it. So for me, it took such a long time at the beginning for my first idea of my first thesis that actually it was a failure, we can say. And then Future Flora came quickly in 3 months. And I didn't have an easy life in academics, because it's not easy to prove that actually this kind of project can be, they are provocative because they can actually be something happening in the future soon. And I will suggest to everybody that starts this kind of career and they have this kind of interest to just use the time in academics to prove it. Because that is the only time where you can have facilities, people supporting you, or you can search for people supporting you and make something different from what you can actually do after alone. Because after alone, you don't really do as much, because maybe you don't have the laboratory or inspiration. So I really suggest to make the most of it and more challenging. And I start to grow bacteria 3 months before the degree show. So everyone can do it. Well, I'm curious to see if here different designers will come up with other projects connected to healthcare. And at the same time, I'm also curious which other kind of topics will be really relevant and kind of there to make it happen, as it could be mine. So I'm very curious to see how this place will be filled with people and clever projects.